Good evening everyone. Welcome to Sociology Analytica. This is Pooja Prasanna, your Sociology faculty. So today I'll be discussing the last question in research methodology chapter, and that is, what are the various sources of hypothesis? What are the various sources of hypothesis? This is the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, what are the kind of errors that may occur in a hypothesis? What are the type of errors that may occur in a hypothesis? It's a 10 marker question. See, honestly, it's of all the questions I've given, I think this is the most simplest and easiest question. It's a direct, straightforward question. I thought, okay, let's just give one simple question. Fine. So the question is about source of hypothesis. So what you can do is, you can actually start your introduction with what is hypothesis. Okay, I would suggest you to start your introduction with what is hypothesis and give one example, one or two example. So here I have taken a simple definition of hypothesis, and that is, hypothesis is a tentative statement which formulates a precise and definite relation between two or more variables. So you have two variables, you try to connect a relationship between two variables, and you want to, it's a untested statement. It's not tested, it is waiting for validation. You test it and then it is waiting for validation. Okay, write a simple definition like this, and then you can give some example. Okay, so you can give example. Here I have taken two in a contradicting or contrasting example, like lower class men commit more crime than higher class men. So it's an untested statement. It may be true, it may not be true. One more example I have taken is, unemployment decreases juvenile delinquency. Delinquency is juvenile crime. Okay, again, it may be true. Unemployment, we don't know whether it is actually true or false. How we will get to know? When we experiment. When we experiment, then only when we test it, then only we'll get to know whether this statement or whether this hypothesis is true or not. Okay, so just write good one or two hypothesis example. Then we'll go to the actual part of the question, that is the various source of hypothesis. So in my body, what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna talk about the various sources. That is, how do you find out, how do you draw your hypothesis? How are you getting these ideas of drawing the hypothesis? The first and foremost is analogy, that is basically resemblance between the phenomena. So something is happening. So then let's say that, let's take example of Weber. So you can give example of Weber here. What Weber did, Weber, there was capitalism, and whenever there was a capitalist in European society, all the all the capitalists, all the CEOs, okay, top rank officers, whoever were there, most of them were what? Protestants. Most of them were Protestant Christians. And then after observing, after there was some sort of resemblance, so what did he do? He come to a conclusion that okay, Protestants, the ethics of Protestants will lead to the rise of capitalism. Okay, did you understand? So after observing certain resemblance between two or more phenomena, you will come up with a hypothesis. The second is observation from past, present day experience. Again, this can be anything. So, you can take many examples. So, let's take example of Karl Marx. So, here you can write example of Karl Marx. So, what did Karl Marx do? So, Karl Marx, in order to understand capitalism, what did he do? In order to understand capitalism, that is present day capitalism, he tried to understand, he tried to observe from the past, that is how past was. Because in capitalism, there was two class. One is capitalistic class and the other one was working class. That is, society was divided into two different strata. So he tried to understand how the strata was previously, how it was in the ancient time period, how it was during slavery time period, how it was during feudal time period. Okay, so by observing past and from the present day experience also, you can have you can make up with a hypothesis. Next is scientific theory. Scientific theory is basically somebody else has already given a theory. From that theory, you take a cue and try to understand or try to make up a hypothesis. So let's just take example of, let me take example of William Harvey. So what did he do? He talked about circulation of blood. That is how the blood veins are interdependent and interconnected with each other. So this was a scientific theory given by William Harvey. So what did Auguste Comte and Herbert Spencer did? Auguste Comte and Herbert Spencer, they were influenced by this scientific theory. The way nerves and veins and other body parts are interrelated and interconnected, in a similar way, society is also interconnected and interrelated. or interdependent. Did you understand this one? The next point is general pattern that influence thinking process of a people. General pattern that influence thinking process of people. So basically, how can we come up with a hypothesis is basically that when you go and study society, okay, when you go and study society, so when you try to interpret how people are studying, for example, ethnomethodologists, you can write this particular from ethnomethodologists. See what ethnomethodology do, they try to understand the meaning of society, the way members think from the members' perspective. Okay, so for some people, for some people something might be bad, for some people something might be good. Did you understand this? So you come up with a hypothesis from how the people are thinking. Based on that, you form a hypothesis. Then finally, interpretation from competitors. Interpretation from competitors, here there is no one has such competitors. You can also write interpretation from other sociologists also. So basically what you do is, let's say Marx has given a hypothesis from a dysfunctional point of view. You study that and then you try to understand from using that hypothesis. What you do, you try to come up with your own hypothesis. Okay, you may reject that hypothesis, you may give a new hypothesis altogether. Did you understand? So these are some of the sources of hypothesis. Now moving on to the next part. What is the next part of the question? The next part of the question is, what are the different kind of errors that may occur in hypothesis? See, this is again a very simple part, because it is there in our textbook itself. That is, whenever we will see while testing the hypothesis. So after you create a hypothesis, you go find the data and then you test the hypothesis. Whenever you test a hypothesis, there will be there are possibility of making an error from the researcher's point of view. And whenever we test the hypothesis, there are possibility of two such errors. Okay, there are possibility of two such errors. One is type 1 error, the other is type 2 error. See, we do talk about, whenever we study hypothesis, we talk about null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, scientific hypothesis. See, the question is not asked, so let's not even write unnecessarily. Don't write all those things. Whatever is in the question, just write only that much. So type 1 error, what is type 1 error? You can simply write that, okay, what is type 1? Just write that. That is more than sufficient. Type 1 error is when a researcher rejects null hypothesis when it is actually true. Okay, and type 2 error is when researcher fails to reject a null hypothesis when it is actually false. Fine. So these are the two type of, see, I'm not going to go in detail about what is null hypothesis and all, because pretty sure you would be studying all these things in the textbook. In case if you have any doubt, you can ask me in the query, but I hope that you know all this content. Okay, I'm just teaching you how to write an answer. So what you do, you write type 1 and then type 2 error. Okay, so it's a very simple, it's a very simple question. No as such analysis or anything. You just have to collect the data and then write it here. Okay, I hope you have understood how to write. In case if you have any queries, please drop them in the comment section. Fine, thank you so much.